Hello and welcome to season 3 of Sex Magic. I am your host, Jen Tews, and I am here with Jennifer Ackad. Hello, Jennifer.
Hi.
Welcome. I'm so excited to have you here.
Yes, very exciting to be on this show also. Thank you.
Yeah, so just take a moment and just share with the audience like who you are, what you do, and ultimately why it is that you do what you do.
Okay, all right. Yes. So I'm an embodiment and transformation coach. I mainly work with women to help them reconnect very deeply to their intrinsic power and really feel safe in their authentic voice, in their gift, and also in gaining confidence in recreating their life, meaning rebirthing onto a playground that is way more sustainable and adaptable for their soul and their essence. So it's a whole transformation process, but ultimately I work a lot with embodiment, connection, and putting attention inside the womb, the cervix, and unleashing our power and our creative power from that space. Yes, and why do I do this is because yes, it's my journey, and for me there's nothing more beautiful than seeing another human being start embodying their essence and their gift. It's we need just more and more of this on the planet, and there's not enough of us.
Yeah. For sure. And I know I can still totally relate to that story. Because high level, it seems to kind of again mimic my own, right? Starting at the point of essence, what is my essence? What does this mean? Starting from a point where I felt so disconnected that I didn't even necessarily realize how disconnected from my true essence and my power I was. But it kind of it rippled out into my life, right? And some of it is learning how to kind of see and read those messages.
Yes.
So
totally relate.
I'd love to hear from you again, why you chose to start tapping into the cervix and womb to start unbundling this whole thing.
Okay. All right. So the womb, I mean, it came to me, right? It's not something that I chose from my mind. It's something that at one point in my life, I hit some walls. So something stopped tasting, life stopped tasting. It lacked meaning. I was in a job that, I was not seeing my future in that. So I started asking myself a lot of questions. And I was traveling a lot at the time. That's, let's say, 12 years and more ago. And I could tap into that texture, that essence that we were just speaking about. And I was like, how do I access this on my day-to-day? How come do I need to just go on a flight, go super far to access this thing, right? So I became very curious. So curiosity for me was one super big ingredient, right? Being super curious and having a genuine question in my heart saying, hey, how do I access this on a daily basis? How can I find this intimacy on my day-to-day and not have to have compensations, whatever type of compensation this was back then. It could be, partying, or it could be, inflamed sex, or it could be traveling, right? But I had this sincere calling in my heart. So I listened to it. And then at one point, this whisper came inside and said, you have to connect to your body. I was like, oh, my body. Oh, okay, yes, of course. And it started like this. So I became obsessed with the body for about 10 years. I was bringing attention inside my body temple. And that was the path to the womb, because ultimately you connect to the body, then your presence grounds, and you're like, wow, there's that infinite potential of love, infinite potential of joy, of pleasure inside my own temple. How come didn't I know? Of course I had teachers. I went to different schools. I have different trainings, but ultimately I was curious, and I became the scientist of my own lab, and that was my body. And I fell in love, right? I fell in love with discovering the jewels and the gifts that were hidden inside the body, and inside particularly the womb, the pelvic floor, the cervix, and all of that area, because it unlocked and unleashed that fierceness and that creative potential and that love that I was seeking. And it's the root of life force also. So I learned through this embodiment that it propels you. Once you connect in that space, first you can regenerate all the time. You can reset and rebirth all the time. and you have access to grounded impulse of life that will guide you organically where you're meant to be going, aligned with your soul calling. So it's a very profound subject, and we can speak more about this, but it's I create from that space, you know. So when I ask my body, okay, is this project ready to be created? It's my womb will tell me, yes, it's aligned, it's here. If it's only in the vision space, it needs to come down a little bit more in the body. So my womb pulsates that life. You know, it gets that seed, and then that seed grows, and then, oop, the baby wants to come. I don't have the choice but to let it come out, right? It's like giving birth. That's
At
how
some
I created.
point it's coming, yeah.
I mean, it's coming. I mean, I cannot hold it, right? So it's on point, exactly. Yes, I'll let you ask questions because I can't speak long about this.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I know like there's so much to tap into here, and like I know like some members in the audience might be going like, whoa, like this is a lot, and like I completely get it. Like I've been there, like I'm still on that journey. There's still moments where I'm going like, oh my gosh, this feels like a lot. But like the key is like the embodiment, like coming back to your body, and like I love how like intuitively right at the beginning, like you were asking yourself those questions. Maybe if you didn't have like the words for it at the time, like you were asking like how do I move about do this? How do I move forward? Right. And I know a lot of times like when that happens, especially when like you're new to this process, fear can come up a lot.
Of course.
So like I don't know if like you have any advice or anything that like in your journey through your process that you can help people kind of like navigate through that, right? Because like I know a lot of this, like since we've been so disconnected, we've actually been trained to like disconnect and ignore and dismiss what's going on in our body. So like learning how to reconnect, right? Like not only is there an unlearning process, but then there's some fear that goes along with that because you're moving into the unknown. You don't know what this like new navigational system, right, is going to lead you towards.
Of course, it's yes, it is scary at the beginning, and you know, like this womb sacred space, we call it the dark hole and the void, right? There's like this poof, you enter, and it's like it's very unknown at the beginning. I will share what comes to me right now is the notion of safety, inner safety and ground. That your first question was, how did I get to reconnect to the womb? Well, this question was also inside of me. How can I find inner safety? How can I feel safe in my power and starting to appear visible in the gifts, starting to have a voice online more publicly, you know? Of course, my body was shaking before this. So with these sincere questions of having to leap into something totally unknown, I discovered that, again, inside the womb, and especially the pelvic floor's breath, right? This is a tool that everybody who goes through the programs and the trainings, we tap into the pelvic floor breath. We're bringing attention onto that diaphragm that breathes, right? The primal breath. And honestly, when we are intimately connected to that breath, we are safe. We realize we understand that the notion of safety is something that comes from within. It's not some external structure that gives that to you. It's not a boss. It's not a husband. It's not a wife. It's not a system. Inner safety is our birthright. As embodied people, as embodied souls, it's our birthright. So tapping into that breath makes you relax your nervous system. So every part of yourself that maybe you've been operating from fear or from survival is going to relax when you tap into that breath, right? And through tapping into that breath, there will be a deep decompensation process. And through this decompensation, yes, fears might appear, anxiety or anguish, or like, what the F is happening? Like I'm entering such an unknown zone. But when we stay with the breath, really the physicality of the breath, all of this just decrystallizes, decompensates. And we realize that behind the survival mechanisms, the fears, our purpose is hidden. the why of our body. Our design is hidden. So it's a beautiful process that brings, you know, to link with the subject, it brings pleasure, it brings sexuality. It's the root of sexuality to tap with that breath. And if we bring that into the bedroom, I mean, it really makes the whole thing more ecstatic, because we are actually having presence inside the tissues. So we actually feel when somebody touches us, when we touch ourselves, we actually feel if it's a yes or if it's a no, if our tissue responds with vitality or if it responds with a blockage, and we need to be more gentle with it. So I'm bridging with the subject of the summit, but it's vast. The potential that we can access through connecting to this space of the body is for me the source of life, you know, the source of life.
Yeah, and you know, and it's so powerful. And like a lot of like what you were talking about, like I'm thinking about like the physicality of sex, even like as a metaphor, right? Like one, just like with birthing the baby, right? Like once like you have this in your womb space, like you can only keep the baby in for so long. At some point, right, the baby has to come out, right? When you have sex, like to be able to be fully present and like in touch with what's going on, like in your body, to be true to your inner experience, you know, like above anything else, and like come back to like that point within yourself and the magic that gets unlocked from that. And I think that's a lot of what, you know, I know for me in the past even had missed out on, right? And like all these worries about like all these things that I have to get to, you know, making sex like a to-do list, a to-do item on my to-do list, right? Or like, yeah, oh, I think you're muted, Jennifer. Yeah. You know, so it's like it's an item like on a to-do list, or I'm more preoccupied with someone else's experience versus my own, right? You know, thinking that, you know, that is the best way to be intimate, but it's really disconnecting me from not only my experience, but then in turn being able to connect with someone else.
Yes, totally. You would like me to share along those lines?
Yeah, please. I could tell there was something like bubbling up.
I mean, it's this subject is, you know, it's very it's a very passionate subject of mine for sure. What can I share on this subject? I mean, it made me giggle when you said that, you know, the to-do list and all of this mind thing, because we all go through this phase of, you know, what is sex, and we learn sex through, you know, our first experiences, or through movies, or through friends sharing, you know. But the experience of it, when you tap into the intimacy, it's far from it. It's far from all those to-do lists, you know. So I mean, what can I share? The magic is in the surrender, you know. It's there's no words really for that, but allow yourself to feel. That's all I can say. Allow yourself to feel deeply your body. Allow yourself to see the person you're with, to feel the person you're with. Allow yourselves to take your time, to not rush also, you know, into the act, or worse, you know, act from the images you have in your head or the projections that come from your mind. But really, like, be in your body and ask yourself, is my body really opening? Is my yoni opening to this man or to this woman? You know, does my body feel like giving? You know, yes or no? And of course, then the mind might go crazy and say, well, but I might be rejected, I might be abandoned, or, you know, like all the shame programming, right? And the sin programming, all of this is encrypted in the program, right? It's in the program. But behind all of this shame, behind all of this guilt, behind all of this insecurity, rejection, wounds of abandonment, that's where the power is. That's where the love is. That's where the sex is. And it's vast. It's very vast. It really transports you into the subtleties of an exchange, and the deep connection, and savoring, you know, every little detail, and using all your senses and being full, you know. So it's I mean, that's what's coming up right now, you know. I'm I'm sharing from a place of you know, feeling it at the same time, not being too intellect about it. But I personally learned a lot through the journey of sex. I personally hit many walls through the journey of sexuality. I got disgusted at one point. I had to, you know, hide in fantasies to be able to feel something. I went through different steps, right? And at one point I was like, enough, enough, enough. And when that sincere calling again in my heart, with that sincere question appeared, I'm like, there is something else. My soul knows, I know there's something else. That's when the doors opened, and more connection to the body and tantra, and then tons of different explorations at the deeper level. And never again will I go back to the way I was having sex in my 20s, for example, you know, once you start tasting, of course.
Yeah, and I think it's always a learning process, right? Like, even if you have already like a phenomenal base and security around sex, right? It's always a learning process, because you get to learn like not only like what it means for you, but like that essence, again, coming back to that essence of your soul and how to express it, and like what you desire, right? And learning how to kind of like get out of the thinking mind and just get into your body. And like, as you were sharing, and I know like you used to have a career as a mechanical engineer, which is kind of like known as a very male profession, right? Like, I used to be an accountant, right? Another very traditional, like, when I say male, I don't necessarily mean like the physical male body. I mean like a masculine profession.
Yes.
So, coming from that, like, I also got to this point again with the walls, not just like, in like a rut in a sex life, but also a rut like in my professional life, right? Like, with all of my relationships, whether they were like intimate, platonic, professional, right? Like, where it just felt like I didn't have like this creative flow. I was just going through the motions, right? And when you kind of first like started out and going, the key is surrender, right? Allowing yourself just to, like, at least how like I felt it at that moment, was just allowing yourself to stop and pause and be exactly where you are in that moment, knowing that you're safe, knowing that you're loved, and like ultimately like knowing who you are, right? And you're not trying to like change or manipulate anything around you, right? You're just allowing yourself to kind of like emanate and flow and kind of move through that space. And for me, like, that's kind of like that's bringing back that feminine essence, right? It's not just operating from the masculine, which I know, like, for my upbringing, like, that was like heralded as like, that's the pinnacle to be like, this is like how you behave out in the world, right?
Yes.
But like, when you bring that feminine in, right, it's not like one or the other, but you bring that in and really learn again, like how your essence needs to balance the two.
Yes.
Like, that is when the magic happens, right? Just like in the bedroom, like the male and the female energy coming together, whether that's like in a male and female body, or that's just the male and female essences, like that, like that's where you're really like allowing it to play. And that's where like I started to notice, right, where it's like I was purely in the masculine, right? Like, I was not leaving any room for my feminine. Mm-hmm. So it's like, of course, like I had no inspiration. Of course, I felt like I was just going through the motions, because I basically was.
True. And I went through the same experience, again, being in the masculine domain, like this, like mechanical engineering. And honestly, when I chose mechanical engineering at the beginning, I had a false concept of power. It was distorted. It was really distorted. And the thing is, my body became more masculine. I was more masculine, even physically. Like, you would look at pictures, I was more masculine, and my pelvis physically started blocking to the extent that I couldn't get pregnant, So it's very important to balance with this feminine flow. And whether it's in the bedroom or in your life or in your projects, it's all about the surrender and being in that feminine quality essence of receiving, receptivity. And as women, we have been, again, very conditioned, very programmed that there's something wrong about receiving, and that we should provide for ourselves and we should be independent, and that the way to succeed is to operate like a man. But we are, thank goodness, we are starting to bring new paradigms, and that we're starting operating from the receiving portion and from the surrender portion. and the flower that opens, you know, of, hey, what happens if I'm not pushing towards a goal, but I'm actually receiving the whispers of my soul, and I see the goal manifest in front of me, and I only respond to it. It's a whole different way of operating. And the same is in the bedroom. The same with, let's say, a masculine principle in front of us, you know, it's like, how can I open to that and allow my body to be taken by it, and then respond to that motion? And if we are in our masculine, then we are in the masculine. But yeah, but it's that dance. That's the beauty. And at the end, this movement is creation. You know, the feminine, the masculine are required to give life, you know. So it's a very profound subject.
Yeah.
I love to share around this.
Yeah, I was gonna say like I could kind of like dive into this like for hours, but I want to make sure like everyone has time like to share like
Yes.
in a practice with you. So like kind of like what I was thinking, and I don't know if you had something in mind, but a way to help the audience kind of tap into their essence, right? Because I think like the more you're able to tap into your essence, the easier everything else gets. Like that is kind of like, for me, like that is the key. Like once you know yourself, like the rest of it gets so much easier. It's just taking that time to really like dive in and get to know. So I don't know if there's like any specific like practice or tool that you have that can kind of help us dive in.
Yeah, for sure. Do you mean like, would you like me to guide something, or you're speaking about the free gift, for example?
Yeah, if you could just guide something here, just something really quick, like 5-10 minutes to kind of help them like tap in. Yeah. And then you can share about like the juicy free gift that you have.
Okay. All right. Yes, what I'll do then is a connection to the pelvic floor, and and allowing them to dive deep inside. Okay, perfect. So you can close your eyes and inhaling, exhaling, and start by connecting to the breath. How does the breath moves inside your body? Really being intimate with how the breath touches your inner world. The texture of the breath, and the texture of the skin inside. As you're breathing, you're allowing also the weight of your body to drop. The surrender of the weight on the ground. Coming back to a natural breath without pushing the inhale nor the exhale. And entering a very relaxed state. Once again, surrendering the weight. And bringing in the intention of receiving sensations and connecting to your body. And start by connecting to the sensations in your feet. The temperature, the texture, the tickling. And relaxing your calves and your knees and receiving the sensations through those areas. And receiving the sensations in the thighs. And feeling your legs, feeling the weight of the legs grounding on Mother Earth, and receiving the weaving with the core center of Mother Earth. And relaxing the left and the right hips. Feeling the texture around the hips, and releasing what's being held around the hip joints. Being curious, and holding space for your body to unfold, to receive. Bringing your attention around the pelvic floor, that web, the bottom of your pelvis, and relax it, allow it to soften. And feel the movements around your pelvic floor. Knowing that even if there's nothing that you feel right now, it's okay. No sensations is also a sensation. Being patient and gentle, receiving. And tapping into the different movements of the pelvic floor as it's breathing up and down, it's breathing. Feeling your breath touching the pelvic floor, very subtly, but very present. Relaxing the womb space, relaxing the pelvic volume, relaxing the sacrum, relaxing the womb, the uterus, the ovaries. And receiving the sensations in that area. Bringing presence to that area. Nowhere else to go, dropping attention inside the womb space. And feeling how the belly breathes. Around the belly button, how are the movements inside the belly? Staying grounded. And receiving at the same time the belly. Allowing yourself to give space for the belly. And relaxing the solar plexus, the diaphragm. Giving permission to the heart to also drop its weight. Relaxing the thoracic cage. And feeling the pulsation of the heart and the pulsation of the lungs. Bringing intimacy in your connection with your organs. Genuine connection. And receiving out the level of the throat, of the shoulders and the arms. And keeping your mouth a little bit open, knowing that it's directly linked to the pelvis, to the pelvic floor. Back of the tongue relaxed. And receiving through the throat, through the skin of your face. And enjoy, feel the pleasure of receiving through the skin of your face. Like this balm circulating inside your skin. Allow your heart to be touched by the pleasure of receiving. Receive all these sensations circulating in your body, knowing that you are safe, you're grounded, and you're receiving pleasure at the same time. Allowing this to be felt around the brain space, around the third eye, in the middle of the forehead, receiving. And a little bit more. Let's enhance the pleasure and receive more of your essence, more of your energy. Allow yourself to receive the infinite love and infinite potential that you are here to receive, the infinite pleasure that your body is desiring to receive fully. And receive from your pelvic floor. Allow yourselves to open the valve and receive all what life wants to pour into you. Receiving from your womb and receiving from your heart. And take a deep breath, bringing the breath down on the pelvic floor and up to the brain. And exhaling slowly through the nose. And one more time, deep inhale and exhaling from the mouth. And relaxing your body and slowly coming out.
All right, that was beautiful. Yeah, I could definitely tell a difference, from when I went in to when I came out. And again, it's something else, like, not to share my experience, just so, like, other people can kind of see the process I go through as I do this, right? So it's like I try not to lose, like, my logical brain, right? Like, I'm not going in, I'm not trying to, like, create stories or do all these things. It's just noticing what's there. And for me, it's like, since I have a lot of energy and, like, I have a tendency, like, where I want to just, like, go do things, I tend to kind of, like, rush through my day, right? Like, I'm very, like, next thing, next thing, next thing, go, 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 go. Like, that's just, like, a natural tendency that I have. And I've, like, learned like, not to judge it, but to notice when it's there. So, like, when I dropped in, like, I noticed, like I was kind of, like, lifting out of my pelvis and, like, moving forward, right? Like, I'm, like, literally, like, running, like, to move, like, to do the next thing. So, and then just, like, noticing, like, that was my state, and then giving myself a moment just to drop in, right? Because it's, like, starting to notice that, okay, like, I'm moving through the day feeling rushed, right? And it's like, that's, if I continue to do that unconsciously, right, like, I feel exhausted and depleted by the end of the day, because it's like I'm in constant giving, constant outpour, versus, like, just taking those few moments then for me to go, okay, like, I can allow myself to kind of recenter, recharge. Like, it doesn't have to look a certain way, it doesn't have to move a different anything. It's just noticing the sensations in my body. And it's so interesting because it's like the human body even mirrors itself within itself, right? So, like, the pelvic floor, like, a lot of it is even, like, mirrored, like, up through your face into your head. And, like, I've been having this thing with, like, my left ear where it feels like, for the better word, like, there's the bone joint in there or something that it keeps moving. So it's like, as, like, I breathe, like, I hear this out of my left ear, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, there's no earwax or something, but, like, it's just like, it just keeps drawing my attention. And there was just a moment where it's like, your ears are your ovaries. Like, that's what came through with me. It's like, okay, it's like, well, what's going on at my pelvic floor where there's so much tension then on the left side?
Left side feminine also, right?
Yeah.
Totally. And we get to discover this inside the body. We don't need to read it in a book. We can bring attention on our left side, and then, oh, suddenly mom's voice or like the feminine voice is going to come out, and that we get to learn directly from direct experience, just like you shared. Hey, I was noticing that I was pushing out, and then I gave myself the permission to sink in, and it changed something inside my body. And that's how we learn. And there's a lot to share around exactly what you shared, but it's precious. Really, it's key. If whoever's watching can do this type of practice every morning, even if it's just 15 minutes, it will change the course of your life, not even just your day.
Yeah.
It will change the course of your life, and you will be operating from a place of response rather than reaction. And you will be operating from an organic place rather than from a pushing place of goals. It's a totally different way of operating in life, very organic, very authentic, and very true to your path and your essence. So yeah, Jen, there's so much to share about this medicine and this tool. And I'm happy you got to taste it, because it will support also all this pushing that you were naming, but hey, let me just take one step back, just one step back, and already this is going to shift something,
Yeah. So powerful. Yeah. And just trust whatever comes through, right? Because like there was time in the past where it's like, okay, like I got this message, oh, like your ears also represent your ovaries. And be like, okay, what kind of like weird thought is this, right? But it's again, trusting what comes up for you and trust your inner experience, and then just explore, okay, like what does this mean? Like, how is this connected?
Yeah.
Right.
That's why I call it laboratory, because, we are here, we say stuff, but at the end of the day, your experiment, you are going to go through experiences, and then you say yes or no, depending on what your body tells you,
Yeah, beautiful. Awesome. Well, thank you, Jennifer. And just before we leave here, if you just want to share with everyone like your free gift and what goodies you have for them.
Yes, totally. I mean, it's totally appropriate because we just went through this small practice, but I have a 90 minutes recording of an embodiment practice that will connect you deeply to the same codes that we just weaved in, and working with the womb, and also building that inner safety that is going to calm your nervous system. Not only that, but is going to propel you on your organic path, and also to upgrade your playground and all of this to connect with more intimacy in your life. So yeah, click on the link, download this 90 minutes practice, and enjoy. If you have questions, you know where to reach out for us.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Jen. Yes. All right.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.